Miss South Africa, that's Tamarind Green. She's in our Cape Town studio for us. We'll talk about her fight against tuberculosis. Tamarind, a very good morning to you, and thanks for your time this morning. Take us through your journey when you actually got sick and what it felt like to have TB.
Good morning. Yes, I am a TB survivor, and I was diagnosed in 2015, June of 2015. I was a third-year medical student, and I presented with enlarged lymph nodes. I then went to my general practitioner, and being a medical student, they automatically asked me questions around TB. And the test started, and it consisted of fine needle biopsies, as well as actually having a surgical operation to remove this lymph node and send it off for a biopsy. And those results came back, and I was diagnosed with pulmonary tuberculosis. I then had to start a treatment for about 6 months. And, I told myself, I'm going to start the treatment and I'll finish it without any struggle. And I continued going to my lectures. However, the medication gave me a drug-induced hepatitis, which means, it's a side effect of the TB medication. It did mess up my liver a bit, which made it much more difficult to finish this course. I was nauseous, I was vomiting. I had to take a month off of my studies and postpone my exam. So dealing with all of that was more traumatic than I ever thought. I literally only spoke about it for the first time this year through the Miss South Africa competition, and I'm still dealing with it. But eventually my liver did recover, and I was able to continue my medication. But it did not only affect me, it also affected my family and my friends, and it's more traumatic than I ever actually thought it was. And yes, I want to focus my campaign this year on helping other people, break the stigma around it.
Yeah, and that was my next question to you, is like, did you find that friends were avoiding you? They didn't want to come near you. They didn't want to actually be around you? Because also, and the thinking, Tamarind, over the past couple of decades is that this is a poor man's illness.
Yes, exactly. That's the stigma associated with it. And I felt, when I was diagnosed, I didn't want to tell my family or a lot of my friends, because I didn't want to be isolated. I didn't want to be treated differently, because often that's what they do with TB patients. And, it happens in the workplace. People who are diagnosed with TB go back to work, and no one wants to be associated with them or touch them or be in their vicinity, even though after you start treatment, you're not contagious anymore. So that was my barrier to speaking up about my story. And it's also associated a lot with HIV. They automatically think that if you have TB, you're HIV positive. So I felt that if I spoke about it earlier, I would have been able to deal with it better. My treatment and my diagnosis would have been easier. And that's why my campaign is focused on breaking the stigma around TB, so that I can help those people who do not have the support, as I did, to make it easier for them and not to fear speaking about this disease.
So tell us about your campaign. How exactly are you doing this? How are you going about breaking down the stigma around TB?
I believe that, as Miss South Africa, I'm already in a position where I have a voice, and a lot of people are looking and listening at me. So being Miss South Africa in itself and saying I had TB, I believe that's breaking the stigma already. Because TB is not a pretty thing and to talk about, and people would never think that a Miss South Africa had TB. So that's the first step, just speaking up about it. I then want to take this message globally. When I enter Miss Universe in December, I'm going to take this campaign with me and talk about TB as much as I can. I am on different social media platforms where I have, hundreds of thousands of people watching me, and I believe that it's a population that I can talk to, that the discussion's not usually there around TB, and that's already, spreading the message to a lot of people who don't usually speak about it. I'm also a new ambassador working with the National Department of Health and the World Health Organization, where I want to be attending these discussions and relaying the information that's happening at these meetings through my social media platforms. I also want to participate in as many community level, down on the ground activities as I can where I can go out and speak about my story and encourage people, you know, to break the stigma and speak up about this disease.
And Tamarind, I think just very quickly for us, I mean, life after TB, how are you feeling now? Just so that I mean, you spoke about just what happened and the side effects of the medication, but just for those who might be going through this now, who might be thinking, what is all of this for? I'm taking this medication, I'm feeling worse in some ways, better in other ways. Just life after TB, what's it been like for you after you've come through it?
I'm cured, I'm healthy, and I'm much happier now that I've spoken up about my, you know, my TB story. So it is 6 months, some 9 months, depending on what TB you have to treat it, but it is curable, and that is the most important thing. I want people to understand that TB is still killing so many people every day, but you can be cured if you stick to your medication. It's not easy, I understand that. Sometimes you feel worse than anything else, but once you finish it and you're healthy, you can live a normal life, a happy life. And I've been doing that for 3 years. I've been cured for 3 years now.
All right, thanks very much for that. Miss South Africa, Tamarind Green, speaking to us about her journey, her fight against tuberculosis, and she's fine now, and sort of focusing her campaign on breaking down the stigma around tuberculosis.